morning, students. This is Anjali, Assistant Professor, Department of CSE, AIML, IARE, Hyderabad. Today's our topic is data visualization using bar chart. In previous class, we have seen that data visualization using line chart. Line charts containing generally line charts containing the line segments. So that line segment means whenever you will get the points in the graph, so at that time by using those points you can draw the line and you can draw multiple lines in the single graph. That means that a single graph can contain your x-axis, then y-axis, and all points. That means we can say that the coordinates. This is your x-axis, this is y-axis, and by using these points you can draw the line and you can draw the line graph. Sometimes we can use the single line, that means it is a single line graph. You can use the multiple line, that is multiple line graph. So whenever you will use the single line graph, so it is very easy to understand, it is very easy to analysis. But when you will use the multiple line in the single graph, so at that time it can be very difficult to analyze the data. It will be very difficult to analyze the pattern. So most of the time we can use the only few lines in multiple line. That means we can say maximum 4 lines we can use for the single line graph. So it will be very easy for the user to understand that data. It is easy to understand the data and analyze the pattern also. So now today we will start the bar chart. So our contents are bar charts, parts of the bar graphs, types of the bar graphs, and advantages and disadvantages. So we will see one by one. First of all, we will see bar chart. Bar charts are pictorial representation of the data. That means we can say the generally grouped in the form of vertical or horizontal rectangular bars, where the length of bars are proportional to the measure of the data. So these bar charts are generally, we can say, these are the pictorial representation of the data. That means you can show your data in the form of the group. These data we can show in the form of the rectangular bars. That means that rectangular bars can be vertical or horizontal also, and they are also known as a bar chart. And the bar graphs are one of the means the data handling in the statistics. Whenever we want to handle the data in the statistics, so at that time we can use your bar chart. The collection, presentation, analysis, organization, and interpretation of observation of data are known as the statistic. And the statistical data can be represented by various methods such as tables, bar graphs, pie chart, histogram, frequency polygons. So whenever you are using the statistical data, at that time we can use some tables, bar graph, bar chart, histogram, frequency polygons. So many things are there. So we can show in the statistical format that generally the pictorial representation of the group data in the form of vertical and horizontal rectangular bars, where length of the bars are equivalent. That means it is very useful to measure of the data, and that are known as the bar graphs or the bar chart. These bars can draw by using the uniform width or variable quantity which is represented on one of the axes, and also the measure variable is depicted on the other axis. The heights or length of the bars denote the value of the variable, and these graphs are also used to compare certain quantities. These graphs are used to compare some quantities. These bars can show by using the length and the height, And the frequency distribution tables can easily be represented using the bar charts, which simplify some calculations and understanding of the data. Now there are some major attributes of the bar graphs. First is the bar graph help to compare the different sets of data among the different groups easily. If you are using the bar graph, so by using this bar graph, it will very easy to compare the data set with the different group, and it shows the relationship using two axes in which the categories are on one axis and the discrete values on the other axis. That means, and everyone knows that graphs have only two axes, x-axis and the y-axis. Both axes are containing some values. One axis can show the categories and another axis can show the discrete values. And the graph shows the major changes in the data over time. So these are your three major attributes. For example, this is the example purchases by user type. These are the purchases and this is the user type. User type are three: guest, new user and the existing user. And the purchases are showing as a 0, 2K and 4K, 6K. That means we are comparing this data by using the different groups. There are different groups means guest, new user and the existing user. So this data we can show by using the bar chart. Now parts of the bar graph. Now there are different parts. First part is a vertical axis. Then another one is a horizontal axis. Then the bar graph's title informs the reader of its purpose. Definitely, vertical axis and horizontal axis both are important, but with these axes, we will need the purpose also. What is the purpose? We should know. So, if you will give the title to this graph, so at that time we can read the purpose, we can understand the purpose of the graph. The title of horizontal axis indicates information that is shown there. Then title of the vertical axis indicate data it is used to display. The categories on the particular axis indicate what each bar represents. The bar graph scale demonstrates how numbers are used in the data. And it is a system of the markings spaced at specific intervals that aid in object measurement. And for instance, the scale of the graph may be stated as 1 unit is equal to 10 fruits. Just we have taken as a unit, 1 unit is equal to 10 fruits. Then there are different types of the graphs. The bar graphs can be vertical or horizontal. Then primary feature of any bar graph is its length or the height. It's very matter length and the height for the bar graph. Then if the length of the bar graph is more, then the values are greater than any given data. And bar graph normally show categorical and numeric variables which are arranged in the class intervals. Generally, the bar graphs consist of x-axis, of an axis and a series of labeled horizontal or vertical bars. The bars represent the frequencies of a distinctive values of variable or commonly distinct values themselves. The number of values on the x-axis of bar graph or y-axis of a column graph is called the scale. Now, types of the bar charts are vertical bar chart and horizontal bar chart. Even though the graph can be plotted using horizontally or vertically, most usual type of the bar graph used in the vertical bar graph. And the orientation of x-axis and the y-axis generally changing over time, and these changes are totally depends on your type of the vertical and horizontal bar chart, which type of the bar chart you are using. So all these orientation are depends on the type of the bar chart. Apart from the vertical and horizontal bar graph, there are again two different types of the bar chart. One is the grouped bar chart and another one is the stacked bar chart. First we will see vertical bar graph. When the group data are represented vertically in a graph or chart with the help of the bars, where the bars denote the measure of data, such graphs are called vertical bar graphs. These types of the graphs are generally drawn for the discrete data types and quantitative comparison between the items of the observation. And here the observation that is going to be compared is represented by x-axis and the y-axis represents the parameter on which this comparison is made. Generally, the bars of the observation originate from x-axis and are drawn vertically upwards toward the y-axis. Now, this is the example of representing a bar graph. Yellow color is showing the period 1 and grey color is showing the period 2. So, team 1 has two groups, that means period 1, period 2. Team 2 has two groups, period 1, period 2, team 3 and team 4. There are 4 groups and every group has 2 periods, period 1 and period 2. Every period has their some quantities, some values. That means these are your categories and these are your quantities. And first team has a value 24 and 78. Second team has value 44, 24. Team 3 value have 12 and 39 and team 4 have the values 38 and 72. And these values we have shown in the form of the group. These are your bar chart. Now second one is a horizontal bar graph. When the group data are represented horizontally in a chart with the help of the bars, then these graphs are called as a horizontal bar graph, where these bars shows the measure of the data and the data is depicted here along the x-axis of the graph and the length of the bars denote the values. Now here you can see these are your horizontal bar graph. There are different categories and this is your quantities and quantities are showing the percentage. This yellow color is showing like boys and green color is showing for the girls. So this chart is showing that sports practiced by 15-year-old student in Jamie school by gender. So there are different groups like athletics, baseball, basketball, football, soccer, swimming, tennis, volleyball and wrestling. And every group has two groups, one for boys and one for the girls. And these are our values. Now grouped bar graph. Grouped bar graph. The grouped bar graph is also called the clustered bar graph, which is used to represent the discrete value for more than one object that share the same category. Group means, you know that the group means cluster, and sometimes we will say the group bar graph as a clustered bar graph. This discrete value for more than one object, that means we can show the more than one object in the same category, and in this type of the bar chart, total number of instances are combined into the single bar graph. And in other words, grouped bar graph is a type of the bar graph in which different sets of the data items are compared. Here, a single color is used to represent a specific series across the set, and the group bar can be represented using both vertical and horizontal bar chart. Here you can see there are different quarters, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 and quarter 4, and This data are showing in one group. Here different color, every color is showing different values, like sky blue color is showing Kent, yellow color is showing Lincoln, Mercy and York. And these are your value, and this is the chart for the new revenue. And this data we have shown in the form of the group. That means we can say it is a clustered bar graph. It is your clustered bar graph. The group bar chart above compares new quarterly revenue for 4 sales representative across years. See, every year 2020, 2020, 2020, 2020, for 2020 we have a 4 quarters, and we have shown the data in the form of the clustered bar graph. And one bar cluster is plotted for each quarter, and each cluster is one cluster, and in each cluster one bar for each representative. Colors and positions are consistent within each cluster. For example, we can see that Kent is always in blue and plotted first. You can see here. Kent is, we have shown in the blue color and it's plotted in the blue color. Then we can see from the plot that Lincoln had the best performance in quarter 1 with Kent best in all remaining quarters. See? Then after that, we can also check the individual performance, such as Mercy's relatively stable performance across the year, or York's major bump in quarter 4 after slide from quarter 1 through quarter 3. So everything we have shown that in the group bar graph, we can see, or we can say in the cluster bar graph. Then stacked bar graph. The stacked bar graph is also called as the composite bar chart, which divides the aggregate into different parts. In this type of the bar graph, each part can be represented using different colors, which helps to easily identify the different categories. The stacked bar chart requires specific labeling to show the different parts of the bar. In a stacked bar graph, each bar represents the whole and each segment represents the different parts of the whole. You can see this is the chart. Here we can see this data is showing in the form of the stack. That means single bar we have divided in the different group, and this is showing the different data like Kent, Lincoln, all data we can see here in the single bar graph. Then there are some the properties of the bar graph. Some important properties are all the bars should have a common base. Definitely, if you want to draw the bar graph, then there should be common base. Each column in the bar graph should have an equal weight. If you are using the bar graph, then every bar graph should have equal weight. The height of the bar should correspond to the data value, and height totally depends on the value of the data, and the distance between each bar should be the same. Even distance between each graph should be same. It should not be different. So these are your properties. That means properties are there should be the common base. Then each column in the bar graph should have equal width. Then height of the bar totally should be depends on your data value, and the distance of the each bar should be the same. Then there are some applications of the bar graph. The bar graphs are used to match the things between different groups or to trace the changes over the time. Yet, when trying to estimate the change over time, bar graphs are most suitable when the changes are bigger. Bar charts possess a discrete domain of divisions and are normally scaled so that all the data can fit on the graph. When there is no regular order of the divisions being matched, bars on the chart may be organized in any order. Then bar charts organized from the highest to the lowest number are called Pareto charts. Now is a real life applications of the bar graph. The bar graphs are visual representation of the data and they are generally used to show the relationship between two or more sets of the data. They are mostly used in the business and finance, but they can also be found in other contexts. Bar graphs are used in many real life situations. For example, a bar graph can be used to show distribution of different types of the food in the restaurant. This is your real life application. And the height of each rectangle would represent how many orders were placed for the type of the food. The bar graphs are also often used to represent the data grouped into categories, such as how many people have voted for each candidate in an election or how much money was spent by each department. The bars on this type of bar represent number or percentage of the people or money spent and are usually stacked on top of one another so that they can be easily compared to one another. Now there are difference between the bar charts and the Pareto chart. The Pareto chart is special example of the bar chart. For a Pareto chart, the bars are ordered from highest to lowest, and these charts are often used in quality control to identify the areas with the most problems. Like bar chart, the Pareto chart does not have gaps between the bars. Unlike the histogram, the Pareto chart summarizes count for a nominal or the categorical variable. Figure gives an example of the Pareto chart that summarizes the type of the findings in an audit of the business process. It includes a legend for the categories, which allows for longer labels that make the categories easier to read. Now this is your Pareto chart. In bar chart there will be the gap, but in the Pareto chart there will be no gap between the two bars. You can see there are different types, different groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 groups. SOP not followed. Then second is showing that the multiple sources of the deliverable. Then incomplete documentation. Everything is showing in the form of the Pareto chart. Now there are some advantages and the disadvantages of the bar chart. First, advantages. The bar graph summarizes the large set of the data in the simple visual form. Then second one is it displays each category of data in the frequency distribution. Third one is it clarifies the trend of the data better than the table and it helps in estimating the key values at a glance. That means these are your advantages. First advantage is that it is very easy to summarize the large set of data. Then it can display each category of the data. Then it can clarify the trend of data as compared to the table and it can estimate the key values at the glance. And there are disadvantages also. The bar graph fails to reveal the pattern, cause and effect. It cannot show the effects, cause or patterns and it can be easily manipulated to yield fake information. Now, bar graphs using the interpretation. Use bar charts to compare the categories when you have at least one categorical or discrete variable. And each bar represents a summary value for one discrete level where longer bars indicate higher values. Types of the summary values include the counts, sums, means, and standard deviation. But bar charts are known as the bar graphs. The bar charts generally highlights difference between the categories or other discrete data. And if your dataset include the multiple categorical variables, the bar charts can help you understand the relationship between them. Now this is the chart of the flavor preferences by the gender, and this is the count, and there are different groups: chocolates, strawberry, and vanilla. There are two groups again, female and male. We have used for female, we have used the pink. Male, it's showing as a blue color. And these flavors, which flavor is preferences by gender, we have shown in the graph. Now use bar chart to do the following. For comparing the counts by categories, then display a variable function, that is sum, average, standard deviation by categories. Understand the relationships between the categorical variables. Unlike histograms, the bars in the bar chart have spaces between them to emphasize that each bar represents a discrete value, whereas histogram are for the continuous data. Now there is a example of the bar graph. First one is a delivery service promises that deliveries will occur within the specified time. The service wants to determine how well they are meeting this promise during the peak hours and non-peak hours. The dataset for this graph uses two categorical variables, each having two values, and which produces four possible combinations that observations can fall within the if delivery time and delivery status, delivery time peak, off peak, and delivery status on time or late. So bar charts typically contain some following elements: y-axis representing the counts, variable functions, that means we can say average, sum, standard deviation, or other summary value. Categories or discrete values on the x-axis. The vertical bars representing the value for each category. Optionally, the bars can cluster in groups and or stack to facilitate comparison. For the delivery data, the bars indicate the counts of the observation having each of the four possible combinations of the categorical values. And the graph shows more deliveries occurring during the peak hours than off-peak hours. Late deliveries are rare during off-peak hours, and however, the number of late deliveries increases markedly during the peak hours. And the service should on improving delivery times during the peak hours, because this chart has two categorical variables and it helps us understand the relationship between them. Now bar charts with the appreciate hypothesis test. You can use the bar chart for comparing the summary values between the categories or understand the relationship between the categories variables. However, if you want to use your sample to infer the properties of the larger population, then you have to be sure for performing the appropriate hypothesis test to determine the statistical significance. And generally, graphs are somewhat subjective because statistical software allows you to edit their properties such as graphs scaling. And changing these settings can alter the appearance of the bar chart and the conclusion you draw from them. Conversely, hypothesis tests provide an objective assessment of the statistical significance. These tests also account for the possibility of the random error explaining the observed pattern. And the hypothesis test that you can use with the bar chart, and which is totally depend on whether you are comparing your summary statistic between the groups or exploring the relationship between the categorical variables. And when you are comparing summary statistics, you have to consider some hypothesis test, and these tests are t-test for one or two groups and ANOVA test for at least three groups. and the variances test that assess variability between the groups. When you are assessing the relationship between categorical variables, consider using the chi-square test of the independence. Now there is a chart of uniform color by survival status dead and alive. There are two groups, dead and alive. This is the count and these are the colors, blue, gold and red. Everything these are showing in the form of the bar graph. This is all about the data visualization using the bar graph. These are your references, so you can go through these references. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.